Welcome back to every naval battle in history. Last episode we tackled the demise of Etruscan power in the western Mediterranean at the Battle of Cumae. In this episode we turn our attention back to the east, with the Athenian-centred Delian League having at the Persians once again, and one of history's great bastards enters the stage, a noble Greek called Cimon. Who were the Delian League? Basically, they were the Greek cities of the Aegean Sea, and somewhat beyond, under the influence of Athens. From their founding in 478 BCE, they met at the island of Delos, hence the name Delian. From 454 BCE, the Athenian leader Pericles ended the sham and moved the League's congresses to Athens, beginning the Athenian Empire. The Athenians shook a lot of money out of the member states for building their navy through the Delian League, so continued success of the League was very important to keep the memberships and the tributes flowing. And they were back to fighting Persians. The Persians still very much viewed all of Asia Minor, what in the modern day we'd call Turkey, as theirs, and never really comprehended the Greek Empire of the sea, which saw the Turkish shore as a natural extension of their own domain. So when was all this? It's a testament to just how sketchy all this history is that the Battle of the Eurymedon might have taken place in 469 BCE, or maybe it was 466 BCE. And that chronology should matter for context in a Han shot first kind of way. Anyway, there's a city called Aspendos on the river Eurymedon in Turkey. We're pretty sure the battle took place here. This picture is of a relatively modern bridge over the river, built on Roman footings. You can see it as a very tight body of water for assembling hundreds of triremes. The Persians had assembled a fleet and an army. The Persians had a relatively simple plan to support a large army with their fleet and to roll up the Turkish coast, capturing the cities they considered to be their own. The Eurymedon River gave them a good anchorage to put this force together. Enter Cimon. Leading the Greeks was one of the great bastards of history, and a beloved figurehead of the bastards who paid ancient historians to write their propaganda. Cimon, I'm going to go with the hard C pronunciation, it is debated, was a hero of the Athenian aristocracy. He'd made a big name for himself before the Battle of Salamis when he convinced his fellow aristocrats that the good of the city meant slumming it with the commoners on ships. Plutarch writes of his heroic nobility in sacrificing his saddle to Athena and walking to Piraeus to join the sailors, shaming his fellow haughty aristocratic cronies into accepting that they might have to share a ship with ordinary folks. As the poster boy of the aristocracy, he's credited often with being a hero in unspecified ways. Amongst other things, he would raise an Athenian army to help the Spartans suppress a slave uprising. We're talking of the sort of high-born, muscular type who's been making the world a terrible place for most of history. The sort of guy who sees how cruel the world is and unfair, and then makes an extra effort to make it just a little bit more cruel and unfair. Of course, the Roman senatorial folks thought he was worth celebrating. For the sake of balance, let's say that the Athenian slanders that Cimon slept with his sister were probably just slanders, and he was without doubt a skilled admiral and general. It's just very annoying that the wealth of Athens, built on its democratic expansion of the polis, and the low-born sailors of the Athenian fleet, would be the foundations of the glory of a man so committed to the destruction of both. Anyway, the Persians had packed their fleet in tight in the Eurymedon River, which was, once again, a perfect killing field for the heavy Greek ships. Time after time in this series, the Persians throw away the advantages of their swift Phoenician ships and let the Greeks force them into a head-on ramming engagement. Earlier in the wars, it was attacking Persian fleets trying to force their way into Greek defensive positions. But at the Eurymedon, the Persians bottled themselves up for the slaughter. The Persians are said to have had 200 to 350 ships against a Greek fleet of 200. Not only did the Greeks slaughter the Persian fleet, but then an interesting thing happened. Let's talk for a moment about heavy infantry at sea. We've touched on before how the relatively low agricultural production of Greece shaped conflict there. The countryside wouldn't support an army on the move with more than around 10,000 soldiers. When the Persians had invaded with their huge army, it was only resupply from the sea that kept them from starving. When they lost their fleet at Salamis, they had to withdraw, leaving only an elite force of, you guessed it, around 10,000 soldiers. But as the Greek cities got wealthier through trade, they started investing in getting more bang from their 10,000 soldiers in the field. To one extent or another, all the Greek cities were structured around putting the best possible force of 10,000 in the field. Better armour, better training, better food during childhood, longer spears. In the wide open spaces of Asia and Africa, these small elite armies don't make sense. It's easier to overwhelm them with numbers than to invest in elites. But in the peculiar logistic landscape of Greece, relatively small armies of well-trained and well-protected soldiers made sense. And completely by luck, that sort of army is also the ideal for expeditionary warfare. I'd also note, as someone who has dallied in historic martial arts and surf lifesaving, that anyone hand-waving about lighter armour being better if you fall into the water needs to try swimming in clothing, and needs to try wearing some armour. If you're wearing any worthwhile battlefield protection, the only advice you can give about falling in the water is, don't. Helmets are not designed to come off easily, and bronze greaves will drag you into the deep faster than you can imagine. So if you're drowned anyway in light armour, you may as well wear the heavy stuff. Having destroyed the Persian fleet, Cimon put his soldiers ashore, and an elite force of heavy infantry striking at a point of their choosing had extremely unpleasant effects on the Persians. Here's a Google Street View of the site of this slaughter today. Again, try and imagine 400 ships and tens of thousands of men in this space. Now to the aftermath. The Greeks captured so much loot from the Persian camp they were able to fund the building of Athens' long walls. And we note here that the Delian League takes all the risks, but Athens takes the money. Persia was never again able to threaten to invade Greece. Say whatever else you want to say about Cimon, and I will say plenty, he pulled off one of the greatest naval victories in history.